This is Coach Jordan Smotherman. We're going to talk about squatting a little bit. And when we talk about the squat, really in this video I want to talk mostly about what's happening on the bottom half of your body. Foot position, knee position, and how you're getting into, how you're initializing the squat. So in other videos we've talked about how to set up like the front rack position for front squat. So that's why I'm really going to put the focus now on the bottom half of the body. So let's say I'm going to do a front squat. I get my rack position set up here so that my knuckle falls just outside of my shoulder here. I step onto the bar. I've got a nice high rack. Now I want to set up my feet here. Well, the way I can think about it is, if you've got an imaginary line drawn from the outside of your shoulder and then from right inside of your hip, you want your feet to fall in that box created by those two imaginary lines, the one coming from your hip and the one coming from your outside shoulder. It gives individual athletes a little bit of slack in where to find their feet, but it also limits you from having a foot position, if you look at my heels, where it's something like this, which is going to be unstable and it's going to most likely pitch me forward onto my toes like that. So I'll get my rack position again, step under it, get my feet in that proper position. Now ideally, if you've got real good hip mobility, you'll be able to keep your feet straight or pretty straight. We don't mind if our athletes turn out a little bit to find a little more depth. Externally rotating like that, getting your knees out and everything. For some athletes who have limited hip mobility, it kind of sets them up so that whenever they drop into the hole, then they've got more room and they don't get pitched forward or limiting in how deep they can squat. But ideally, you're going to have your feet just about that width that I described earlier and straight ahead. And as you come down, nice big breath as always. And then you want to get into a position where you see here, and I'll go ahead and get into this position with the bar. You want where your knees are tracking outside, either over or outside of your feet. I'm really on the outside of my feet, so there's not a lot of tension right here on the inside of my feet. I'm mostly along the outside. So if you were to put like a pressure plate underneath me, underneath my foot, there would really be pressure along here and then into the heels of my foot, kind of around this cup right here. That way, I can get nice and wide here, get my knees out, and I'm in a position now as I come up, and I'm transitioning that load from down to up, where I can fight any sort of knee dive. And most athletes that we see come in, they're going to have some degree of knee dive in one leg or both legs as they come up, as that transition happens. And a lot of that is because they're allowing their ankles to dive in, or they're just shooting their knees forward. And as they shoot their knees forward, the only place that they can find room to get a proper depth is by bringing their knees in like this. That knee dive, though, is setting you up to take all of those shear forces through the connective tissues in your knee, rather than getting your knee out and feeling that come down right through the bone and into the ground, into your foot. So straight ahead feet, allowing those knees to come out, very crucial to a good squat. Again, if you've got limited hip mobility, or for example, if you're doing a low back squat or maybe a box squat, you can get your feet out, you can get your toes out a little bit, kind of flare them out. It's going to give you some room to get into that low position in the hole. And then the next thing I'll show you, you'll see from the side, it's just how you get into the squat position. The first movement of a squat is really a pretty subtle one, and it's just breaking at the hips rather than at the knees. So I'll take it from a back squat position here. So the proper way to start the squat is just break at the hips, just that little pushback right there. It's not very substantial. I'm not like going way back or anything like that. It's just that little break right there. That's going to shift the load onto my heels and allow me, as I go back, to lift the weight with my butt rather than with the small muscles that are controlling the position of my knee. As opposed to this, where you shoot forward with the knees. Look at the difference here versus this. This, most people are going to, especially males, are going to run into ankle mobility limitations as they drop down. If you watch me, in fact, I'll turn around so you can see, I've got some limited mobility in my left ankle. If I shoot my knees forward, it's not long before my left heel wants to pick up right there. Well, now I'm in a really bad position with a lot of weight on my back where I'm going to get pushed forward and I'm going to need a spot, or I'm going to have to try to dump it somehow. So just that little subtle movement where you push your hips back, get your weight onto your heels, allows you to squat low without any ankle mobility problems. And also, if you shoot your knees forward, really the first temptation is not to get pushed forward onto your toes, but just to get into this position, and then you stop right here. But now you're forcing the small muscles around your knees to change the momentum of the weight, and you're going to overload your knee rather than allowing yourself to get deep into that hole and transitioning the load to the larger muscles of your hamstrings, butt, and low back, and adductors, which are going to help bring you out of the hole. And they are simply muscles that are larger, and they're going to allow you to express more strength as your training continues. So those are some things that we see on the bottom half of the squat that we want to prevent. Knee dive by assuming a proper foot position at the beginning. Coming onto the toes by, we want to prevent coming on the toes by getting your butt back rather than diving your knees forward. And then also not going into a full squat, which is going to unduly load your knees rather than the larger muscles of your hamstrings, butt, low back, and adductors. So that's the squat and some common mistakes that we see with it.